There's a question that I have. Have you ever wondered why, when Jesus resurrected, why did he not appear to his disciples first? A lot of people don't know this, but the Jewish day starts in the evening. All right, so we're in the final chapter of the Gospel of Luke, and this chapter introduces us to the resurrection of Jesus. But there's a question that I have. Have you ever wondered why, when Jesus resurrected, why did he not appear to his disciples first? Why did Jesus choose to appear to Mary and the other women? Luke is also giving us some insight that he appears to two other disciples who were on their way to Emmaus before appearing to his disciples, before appearing to the men who had followed him. I would have thought that the first set of people that Jesus would have appeared to after resurrecting from the dead would have been his disciples. Why did he choose to do that? If you've read this chapter as well, you realize that Luke's account of Jesus's resurrection is very different. Not different, but adds a bit more detail to what Matthew and Mark had written. We see that in Matthew and Mark, they say two women came to prepare or complete the preparation for his body. He came with spices. In Luke's account, it says multiple women came. Why is Luke adding this detail? Plus, I found something in this chapter. There's a hidden detail with Joseph of Arimathea. He's the one who gave Jesus his tomb. He allowed Jesus to be buried in his tomb. But who was he? We all know him as an influential guy. He was rich, but I found a hidden detail about who he actually is or was. We're in Luke chapter 24. This is the last chapter of Luke before we get into the book of John. And we have seen a theme over the last 23 chapters. Luke being a doctor, his brain is wired differently, and so his writing style is also different. Luke being a scientist, he is more process driven than results driven. You know, for most people, when they see a result, they're happy with the result. I don't care how we got to this result as long as we got there. As a scientist, because you are trying to not just ensure that you are able to get a result once, you are trying to ensure that if I want to get this result 100 times, how do I guarantee that I'm able to replicate this result? And so as a scientist, they are more interested in the process of how something happened. I'm not just interested in the effect, I'm interested in the cause. What caused this to happen? And so as we've been studying the book of Luke, we're seeing that Luke is more particular about the details. He's more particular about why things are happening. He's more process driven. There's something that they call it the root cause analysis. We want to know the origin of the spread or the origin of the results, because if we know the origin, then we can replicate. We can know why it has happened the way it has. And in Luke chapter 1, we see that he gives us the intention behind why he's writing this letter. He's writing to a man named Theophilus, and Theophilus is someone who has been taught, who has received the gospel of Jesus, but there seems to be some vagueness, there seems to be some inconsistencies in the stories that he has received, because Luke introduces the letter saying, I'm writing to give you an orderly account of everything that you have been taught so that you can be convinced. So he's writing to Theophilus so that Theophilus can go from belief in Jesus to being convinced, to having conviction in Jesus. And so Luke's account gives us more details about the stories. If you read a story in Matthew and Mark and you come to Luke's account, you see that he's given a bit more detail around it. He gives us a lot more stories than we find in Matthew and Mark as well, because he's asking better questions when he is studying or meeting people who may have been eyewitnesses to what happened. You can meet someone, that person has a lot of answers, but your questions will determine what you receive from that person. And so as Luke is investigating, why did this happen? Why did that happen? He's asking much deeper questions in order to retrieve answers that were available but couldn't be received, because the people who were asking the questions had different intentions for writing. Matthew was writing to prove to a Jewish audience that all the prophecies in the Old Testament, they were fulfilled in Jesus. And so if you read Matthew's account, Matthew's narration starts off with the intention of, he identifies a prophecy and is like, this is how Jesus did it. So he wasn't writing to give an orderly account. Mark writes with a different intention as well, but Luke is trying to give us a holistic narration, more detailed. This is how it happened. We also see in Luke's account that he is providing more sources, because if the intention is to create credibility, then the more people that witness this thing gives the story more credibility. And so we're seeing that he's capturing more personalities who were involved in the life of Jesus. It is why when Jesus was born, he captures that there were shepherds that were close by. Angels appeared to them. When Joseph and Mary had had Jesus, they went to the temple. Prophet Anna, Simeon, these other people witnessed his birth. And we're going to see more about that in Luke 24, because when Matthew and Mark say, oh, just Mary Magdalene and Mary, the other Mary, were there at his tomb, Luke gives us a different account that no, there were a lot more women. There were a lot more witnesses. In the last chapter, we see that Judas, one of Jesus's disciples, had betrayed him. Luke is not satisfied with the result that, oh, Judas betrayed Jesus. Luke is like, why would one of his disciples who had witnessed his miracles, performed miracles himself, why would that kind of person betray Jesus? He's asking deeper questions. And we see that in Luke's account, he tells us that Satan entered him. Luke is detailed. Luke also gives us an additional detail that Matthew and Mark don't, that when Jesus appeared before Pilate, there was a lot more that happened there. Pilate was trying to avoid being the one responsible for his death, and he actually redirected them to Herod because he was hoping that Herod would be the one to make the judgment. And so he gives us some additional detail that Pilate wasn't just the one. This is verifiable evidence here. Herod also had an encounter with Jesus. In the last chapter, we also see that he gives us more detail about the two thieves on the cross. Matthew and Mark just say Jesus was crucified with some other criminals, but Luke gives us the conversation that he had with one of them who was repentant, enough to ask that Jesus remembers him. And this was very critical, because if not for this story, we would not believe that people who are on their dying bed can receive Jesus and be in heaven, can receive Jesus and have salvation. Because prior to this, we've been led to believe that you need to show fruits, which is critical. But there was a man who was on the cross. He didn't have the time to get baptized. He didn't have the time to show fruit. Jesus could only see the fruits that was emanating from his words. That out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Based on how he's speaking, I can tell that there has been a transformation. There are people on their deathbeds who, based on their confession, it's evidence enough for their heart transformation, because only God can see the heart. If not for this conversation, we'll be debating about that. There are a lot of people who believe that you need to be baptized before you can be saved. The man on the cross could not be baptized because the situation did not allow for it. And so in Luke 23:50, we see something else. We hear about a man called Joseph of Arimathea. Who was he? Now, at Luke 23:50, it says, now there was a man named Joseph, a member of the council. Yes, Joseph was an influential person, but I'm sure Luke was asking you, like, why, like, what gave Joseph the right to go and meet Pilate to ask for Jesus's body? Joseph, a member of the council. What council is Luke referring to? He was a member of the council, a good and upright man who had not consented to their decision and action. Luke 22 verse 66 says, now the men who were, verse 63, the men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him, and they blindfolded him and demanded, prophesy who hit you, and they said many other insulting things to him. Now check this. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together. So based on this, it says Joseph was a member of the council. So is it possible that Joseph of Arimathea was also an elder? And this is also giving us some insight that not everybody was on board to crucify Jesus. Now there was a man named Joseph, a member of the council. So Joseph could have been one of the elders in the council, one of the decision makers. And it says that he was a good and upright man who had not consented to their decision and action. Oh, a Sadducee maybe? Because yes, I like that actually, because the council was set up, it was like the Supreme Court. So it was made up of the chief priests, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees. So this is giving us some additional detail that, because if you just read Matthew and Mark, you'd be like, everybody voted against Jesus. Everybody wanted him dead. But now we are seeing that there was at least one person. There was at least one person who said no. He did not agree. But the fact that he did not agree, it doesn't say he was probably outvoted, but it doesn't say if he actually verbally communicated that. And I think when we get to the book of John, John gives us a bit more color to what actually happened here. So it shows us that Joseph, in order for him to ask Pilate for Jesus's body, he had enough influence. He was an elder. He was part of the members of the council. He had a high status. Check this, Luke 29, it says he himself was waiting for the kingdom of God. So it's also showing us that Joseph of Arimathea was a possible disciple. John even confirms. If you read the book of John, I believe John 19 or 20, it says, and Joseph of Arimathea was a disciple of Jesus. So now we're seeing Joseph different. And so it says then he took the body of Jesus down, wrapped it in linen cloth, and placed it in a tomb. John gives us additional clarity here that it was him and Nicodemus who actually put him in the tomb, and they anointed his body with myrrh. But because it was preparation day and the Sabbath was about to begin, they couldn't complete the preparation of his body. So verse 55 of chapter 23 says, then the women who had come with Jesus from Galilee Galilee followed Joseph and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandments. So Joseph and Nicodemus prepared his body, but didn't have time to complete it because the Sabbath was about to begin. I want you to imagine they've taken Jesus's body down. Imagine the state of Jesus's body at that point. They have removed the nails from his hands, removed the nails from his feet. There are 4 holes on his body right now. Remember, they also pierced his side to make sure that he was dead. 5 holes. Interesting. I never even saw that. 5 holes. 5 is the number of grace. I'm not saying that's just coincidence. Maybe not. But there were 5 holes. You can imagine his lifeless body is on display. The one who they had been used to seeing giving life to people now laid lifeless. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but the Jewish day starts in the evening. And I remember I did a short about this. When I was studying the creation of the world, I saw something very interesting. Genesis 1 verse 3 says, Then God said, let there be light, and there was light, and God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Now, he now says, so the evening and the morning were the first day. And I thought that was, okay, maybe that was a mistake, because in my mind, I'm thinking morning and evening makes a day. But in Genesis 1, go check it out. So the evening and the morning were the first day. And I kept reading. Day 2, same thing. So the evening and the morning were the second day. And it goes all the way down to day 6. And so it occurred to me, according to God, the day doesn't start in the morning. The day starts in the evening. So when it says that the Sabbath was about to begin, it was the evening, because their day starts in the evening. That's your day in the evening. The enemy has confused it. He has rearranged it, where we begin our day in the morning and then we relax in the evening. The evening is when people just sit down, watch TV shows, relax. You are not alert. It is why make your to-do list for the next day the night before, not in the morning. When you do your to-do list and you have a plan for the next day, when you go to bed, your brain begins to work on how are we going to get this thing to happen. You wake up with intention. You wake up with purpose. If check the other way, you just wake up and like, oh, so what are we going to do today? Now you've wasted, like you're supposed to start your day with a bang. This is what I'm doing, XYZ. But you're waking up and you're trying to figure out what am I doing? So instead of using your evening time aimlessly, plan for the next day. Ask the Holy Spirit, what are we supposed to do tomorrow? And go to bed early. Your mind, your spirit can influence your body. You see, a lot of people say, oh, I don't know how to wake up early. You are struggling to wake up early because you don't have a plan for the next day. You know how I've been able to wake up at 5:30 consistently to study the Bible? Because I have planned my day. Every 30 minutes is accounted for. So I know that if I don't wake up at 5:30, something else. I already know the chain reaction, the consequence of the break in the chain reaction if I don't wake up. So when I wake up and I get those whispers every single day, just sleep an extra 10 minutes, just sleep an extra 30 minutes. I do not listen to it because I already know the ripple effect that it's going to have. So start your day in the evening. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this clip and you want to know how to hear from God using the Bible, I'd love to invite you to a live Bible study session that is happening every single day, Monday to Friday, 5 to 6 p.m. EST, where I show you how to not just read the Bible for information, but how to meditate on it for revelation, because revelation is the key to your transformation. Take care. Bye-bye.